Okay, so today we're going to look at day 1 answers for the 4 times a week homework, which covers Pythagoras, SOHCAHTOA, and angles of elevation and depression. So, question 1. In a right angle triangle, if the length of one leg is 3 and the length of the other leg is 4, what is the length of the hypotenuse according to Pythagorean theorem? So, firstly, we want to draw this out. So we know we have a right angle triangle because it tells us to use Pythagoras. It then is asking for the hypotenuse. The other 2 legs, it doesn't matter which way around we have them, here. Now we know using Pythagoras, we know that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So using this, we have 3 squared plus 4 squared equals c squared. This gives us 9 plus 16, which equals c squared, which then gives us 25 equals c squared. We now need to use the inverse. So we know we're going to take the square root here, and the square root of 25 is 5. So this tells us that 5 equals c. So this angle here, this length here, is 5. Okay, moving on now to the next one that we have here. Question 2. A person is standing 30 meters away from a tree and looking up at an angle of 45 degrees. If the person's eye level is 1.5 meters above the ground, how tall is the tree using SOHCAHTOA? So we're going to do a sketch. So first of all, we know that we have a person. Okay, then we also know that we have a tree. We know the person's eye level is 1.5 meters. So eye level, 1.5 meters above the ground. We know the person is also standing 30 meters away. So we know the distance from here to here. So also we can assume the distance from here to here is 30 meters. Then we know that from the person looking up, the angle is 45 degrees. So we know that when we look up this way to the very top of the tree, we know this angle here is 45 degrees. Now, we have a right angle triangle we're going to assume here, because it's asking us to use SOHCAHTOA. And then we can see that we have the base, and we are looking for the height of that triangle. So this means that we actually have the opposite, and we have the adjacent. So using SOHCAHTOA, we're going to make a decision that we need to use tan because we have our opposite and we have the adjacent. That's what we're working with here. So using this, we're going to use our formula, and we know that tan of the angle 45 equals opposite over adjacent. Now we don't know what opposite is. Just put a question mark over adjacent, which is 30. Now to solve this, we are going to need to multiply because this means question mark divided. So we're going to multiply. So we have 30 times tan 45 has to equal question mark. You're simply going to put that into your calculator and you're going to get the answer of 30. And everything is in meters here, so that must be 30. Now, it's asking for how tall the tree is, so we know that this here is 30. But we also know that this here is 1.5. So your final answer, if I get a different color here, is going to be 31.5 meters for the height of the tree. Okay, moving on to question 3. A ladder is leaning against a wall with the bottom of the ladder 6 meters away from the wall. If the ladder makes an angle of 60 degrees with the ground, how long is the ladder using SOHCAHTOA? Okay, so we know we have a wall. So do a little sketch of your wall. You also know that you have a ladder. Now every ladder is going to be at a slant. It's going to be like this. Okay? It doesn't matter, it's not at the top of the wall. Now we know the bottom of the ladder is 6 meters away from the wall. So 6 meters along the bottom. We know also that with the ground, the ladder makes an angle of 60 degrees. It's asking here, how long is the ladder? So it's actually asking us to calculate this part, the hypotenuse. So we are using the hypotenuse and we also have the adjacent. So using SOHCAHTOA, we are going to use Ka. So we know that cos of 60 equals adjacent over hypotenuse. So we know that 6 divided by h. Now, there's a few methods to do this. I would always recommend move the h first, so you follow what you're doing. So we're going to multiply by the h. I'm going to times by the h on both sides. So we're going to get h times cos 60 equals 6. And then we're simply going to divide, because we're trying to get h alone, by cos 60. So we get h equals 6 divided by cos 60. You're simply going to put that in your calculator and you get h to equal 12. Remember your units, the question was in meters, so it's going to be 12 meters. Okay, question 4. A person is standing on top of the building that is 50 meters high. If the person looks down at an angle of depression of 30 degrees, how far away is a person standing on the ground using SOHCAHTOA? Okay, so fill everything in. So first of all, you have a person standing on top of the building. So draw yourself a little building. Then you have a person standing on top of it. Okay? The building is 50 meters high. If the person looks down at the angle of depression of this. So what we're going to assume here is we don't have any information about the person's height. So we're just going to assume that all of this here is 50, looking at this question. Okay, it's a little bit tricky with that because I understand that you should really have the person's height. So we're going to assume that this is 50 meters here. Now, angle of depression is when we go across. So we're going to go across here and we look down. Okay, now the key thing here is if we look at a person on the ground, there's a person on the ground down here. We are looking for this distance here. How far away is this person on the ground? So when we're looking down, the angle of depression, we're going to go down to here, is looking down from the straight horizontal line. So this angle here is 30 degrees. Now, there's a couple of methods you can do this. You can use alternate angles and instantly know that this one here is 30. You might not have done that at the moment, so we can also use the fact that this here is 90, and that automatically means that this angle within here is 60 degrees. Now, we have the height of the triangle, and we have the 60 degrees, so we are looking for the opposite, and we have the adjacent. So we're going to use tan. So we know that tan of 60, because that's inside the triangle, equals opposite over adjacent. Now, to move the 50, we're just going to multiply by it. So we're going to do 50 times tan 60. So 50 times tan 60. That equals the length of the horizontal. That's going to give us 86.6 meters. That's how far away the person is from the bottom of the building. Okay, question 5. A person is standing 40 meters away from a flagpole and looking up at an angle of 60 degrees. If the person's eye level is 2 meters above the ground, how tall is the flagpole? So notice with this one, we actually have the person's height, which is more real life than the last question. So we have a flagpole here. We also have a person standing over here. The person is looking up at the top of the flagpole. We know the person is looking up at an angle of 60 degrees. Here we now have our right angle triangle. Here we have this right angle triangle, so we can use SOHCAHTOA. And we also know that the person's eye level, it's not the person's height, but the person's eye level is 2 meters above the ground. So we're going to need to use that at the end. We also know that the person is standing 40 meters away. So using SOHCAHTOA, we have the adjacent, and we are trying to find how tall the flagpole is. So we're trying to find this here, which actually is the opposite. So we have opposite and we have the adjacent. So we're going to do tan. Tan of 60 equals opposite over adjacent, 40. Now, again, we are looking to isolate the opposite. So we're going to multiply by 40 because that's the opposite of dividing. So 40 times tan, 60. We're simply going to put that into our calculators. And that's going to give us 69.28. So I'm going to round that, 69.3 meters. However, we are not finished because we need the total height of the flagpole. So we need to also add the 2 meters of the person's eye level. So we're going to do 69.3, add 2 is going to give us 71.3 meters as a final answer.